Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm your host, Andrew Lanca. Welcome to Buffs and Nerfs, presented by The Mind Refinery. This podcast will be hosted by myself and Sam Hall. Sam and I will explore the cultural significance of video games and examine their artistic merit and how it reflects the industry as a whole. So sit back and enjoy Buffs and Nerfs. And as always, a subscribe and positive rating on this or anything you've listened to would be greatly appreciated.
And with that, welcome to Buffs and Nerfs, the podcast about video games. I'm Sam Hall, and Andrew Lanca is my co-host. And today we're going to be discussing a topic in games that might seem odd. We are going to be discussing flaws in games. We're not talking bugs, we're not talking issues of poor programming. What we're talking about is design choices that made it all the way to the end for one reason or another and are blatantly terrible. Andrew, would you like to tell us the big news from Hollywood, the land of dreams, and Denzel Washington?
Those are one and the same. Denzel is quite dreamy, in my opinion. Another dreamy individual, Oscar Isaac, has been very much rumored and is very much the rumor mill is flying that he will be playing Solid Snake in a Metal Gear movie. Now, this movie has been, I don't know if production is the right word, but it's been in like talks of happening for damn near decades at this point. Like, this thing has been in talks forever. So I'm super excited that this is finally giving it legs. I feel like I remember seeing somebody posted where there was an interview, and then somebody kind of asked him like, "Oh, what's like your dream role or something?" And then he says, "Solid Snake in the Metal Gear movies." So like, I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Maybe they're like, "Yeah, maybe we should talk to him." But yeah, I don't know. That's super exciting. Like Metal Gear, first of all, like Metal Gear Solid, for the PS1, like that game just lends itself to a movie so well. I've always wanted that to come to fruition because I'm just, huge Metal Gear fan, and just watching a movie, they always needed the right person to play him. I mean, David Hayter would obviously be one of the best choices. Like David Hayter, first of all, just. He just embodies. He's the original voice actor, but he embodies Solid Snake. He even looks like the dude. But I mean, Oscar Isaac, I can't complain about that.
Oh, that's great. Is Kojima writing or directing this?
No.
Good.
I don't think. Well, because it's not his property. Like, it's not his IP. It's owned
it's Capcom, right?
No,
it's not Capcom.
Konami. It's Konami.
Konami, yes.
It's going to be made by Sony. It'll be a Sony Pictures. The director is Jordan. Jeez, I don't know.
From Work. Jordan from Work's directing it. Good for him.
Jordan. VOGT-Roberts. How do you pronounce that? Vogt.
I think it's Vought. I think
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. He directed. Actually, I looked him up. He actually directed Kings of Summer, which was actually a really sweet movie. And then he also did Kong Skull Island, among some other things. But yeah, actually,
Is that also a sweet movie?
I don't know. I haven't seen Kong Skull Island, but Kings of Summer is actually a really sweet, nice movie that I remember I watched a little while ago, and I was like, yeah, that was a sweet movie.
Is Kong Skull Island the one with Tom Hiddleston?
It might be.
I think it is. If it is, I have actually seen like the first half of that, and it was pretty good, but then I fell asleep.
Yes, it is with him.
Good for him. I'm glad he's getting work.
Yeah, and then this also leads into there's also there was an ex-employee of Konami who has now come out and also has said that they are working on a Silent Hill and also Metal Gear Solid remake for the new current gen that's out now, PS5. So that's pretty exciting. The only remake of Metal Gear Solid was Twin Snakes for the GameCube, which, I mean, yeah, like a lot of people obviously owned a GameCube, but as far as remakes go, there's been one remake, and that remake was made like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. So this is, I feel like, always been something. And then same with Silent Hill. There's going to be PT, that the PT demo, which turned out to be a Silent Hills demo on for the PS3 or PS4 that never came out due to Kojima leaving Konami. But yeah, so these are kind of, I felt like, Konami's like ace in the hole, like that they kind of kept in their back pocket all these years, that they're like, all right, we need to make some money, time to churn out these cash cows again. Having said that, man, I'm gonna be so down with anything Metal Gear. Unfortunately, the recent track record for the franchise for Metal Gear hasn't been that good. With the Metal Gear Zombies game that came out, that I did not waste my time with, but
wait, was that the one which was like Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain, but just in an alternate dimension? You build a base.
Yeah. It was essentially just like a base, like a tower defense game, but with zombies.
Yeah.
It just seemed super shitty, and like the reviews on it were just atrocious. So I like, it's kind of the franchise, like they took the engine that they had for the newest Metal Gear and just churned this out. It had nothing, like Kojima had nothing to do with it anyway. Having said that, two big pieces of news for Metal Gear in the last week, so I'm happy about that.
Well, a month ago we had Mass Effect Remaster, which is great. Now you're getting your remaster, so it's wonderful. We'll be able to spend times reflecting upon games that we loved and play them again in 4K definition. What a time to be alive. Any other video game news you've been hearing about? Because it seems pretty quiet on my front, other than the fact that everybody's like, Cyberpunk next week, oh god. Oh, for those who aren't aware, we're recording this on December 5th, so it's 5 days until Cyberpunk comes out. This may be released afterwards.
So excited.
I'm looking forward to the CD Projekt Red, even though they have, let us say, sketchy advertising and some insensitive posters in the game. No, I'm looking forward to it. I've been quite satisfied with their work.
Insensitive posters?
Oh, you didn't hear about this? Oh, there's like a poster of there's a fake advertising poster in one of the settings, I guess in like a hallway or perhaps a corridor of some form, maybe even a chamber, and it shows a woman drinking a can and it says mix it up, and it's a woman, but she has a very like noticeable penis bulge, and it's like, transgender people were like, that's offensive, rightfully so. So it's a little like, I don't know what you were thinking doing that, CD Projekt Red, but I'm still looking forward to your game. But yeah, all right, not on that topic, just killing the conversation, which is what I do best, because this is a podcast. It's about awkward silences and long pauses. Today's topic is going to be games that have flaws. And when I say a flaw, I don't mean a bug. I don't mean like, a piece of code got through and you could glitch into something. What I mean is a design choice in a game where you're playing it and it happens, you're like, why did they leave this in? This is not good. Or this is terrible. Did they not have quality testing? Was it a matter of time, budget, or was it simply some designer going, this is a great idea. I think everybody's going to love it, and being terribly wrong. So let's get right into it, as they say on certain podcasts that I won't mention. What does that guy say?
Let's just jump into it.
Let's just jump into it. A wholly original Mind Refinery trademarked line, and it's something I like to say to you, beautiful bastards. Anyways,
I haven't watched Philly D in like 2 years.
Yeah, but you still have his face as a chest tattoo, so I don't think that's ever going to go away.
It's a back tat.
Oh, it's a back tat. Why did I think it was a chest tattoo? My mistake.
It's a back piece.
Chest is Toronto. You always represent your city on your chest. Yeah. Some good Gothic lettering there on Andrew Lance's hairy. Anyways, I'm going to start off with... I figure the best way to do this is just to go back and forth. I'm mentioning a game, Andrew mentions a game, blah, 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 and we'll go to a done. And I'm going to start off with a strategy PC game that came out about 3 years ago, if I remember the numbers correctly. I could have looked it up, but a little hungover. Civilization 6. Now, the Civ series I've been playing since it started back in, I want to say like 91 or 92. It's been around for a very long time. And I will say, with each iteration, they usually improve, better than the last one. There are some people who are fans of older versions and stuff like that, but as it goes on, they've been improvements on the previous ones. And like in Civ 5, they brought in a hex grid instead of just a standard grid, like a 4-square grid. It turned into a hex map, which made it much more interesting. You couldn't stack units, that sort of thing. But in Civilization 6, which is great, they have one huge flaw, and the flaw is not really stopping you how you play, but it stops you simply from playing. You get messages from the other civilization leaders, and oh boy do you get messages. It's like they can't stop talking to you. The only thing you're sitting there going is like, do you talk this much to the other guys, or is it just me? You see, what it is basically, Civilization 6 is a bunch of Excel charts fighting each other on a giant Excel chart. And a lot of what you do is a mathematical thing. Like you have we're going to start with the most classic example, which is Cleopatra, the default leader of the Egyptians. I don't think Egypt ever got another leader, but I might be wrong about that. And one of her big things is army size. She's all like, if you have a small army, she doesn't like you. And if you have a big army, she's like, ooh, you have a big army. I like it. Sorry, that was way too sexual for what that I feel terrible. I'm not trying to be a sexist jerk. Like, she literally, like, you have to look it up on YouTube. It's remarkable how she tells you have a big army. But the problem is if you have a vastly smaller army, she'll bother you every few rounds going, look at the size of your army, it's tiny. And if you have a big army, she'll bother you every few rounds going, hey, nice big army you got there. I see you understand the importance of force. But the worst part is especially in the early game, if she's your neighbor, it's very easy to get into this sort of part where you have like, you're creating units not as rapidly as you do in the end game or as in bulk, but more sort of like you pop them off. So like, one round you create an extra swordsman or whatever, and she's like, got a big army, but then she creates a swordsman, and the next round she's like, what's with the tiny army? And the thing is, you can't turn these things off. Maybe you can now. I haven't played in a little while, but you couldn't turn these things off in the original Civilization 6, and they just kept coming. What's that? Did you build an extra wonder over Qin Shi of the Chinese? Oh, he's like, how dare you? Are you talking to a city-state? That's going to get Barbarossa and, oh my god, I can't remember the Greek guy's name. It's not Herodotus. But anyways, the leader of the Greeks gets mad. It's not Alexander. It's basically this flaw I find because, weirdly, the Civilization games are kinetic. You wouldn't think so from a turn-based strategy, but everything, it's like a very slow-moving but constantly moving thing. Every round you're like, oh, I want to get my production up. I'm going to have my next infantryman next round. Ooh, I'm going to have a tank next round. Ooh, I'm going to finally finish building my granary next round. Ooh, I'm going to research this. Like, you're always kind of moving forward. You're always looking at the next thing. And then these things show up, and they have to go through the entire animation, and they go through the entire spiel that they say, and then you click the exact same thing. It's like, that's nice, is basically your response. It's a design flaw, I find, because Civilization 6 games are the classic. They're one of the first games that had the whole staying up till 3 a.m. going just one more turn. And I've played games, and at a point after like the third or fourth time getting messaged by a leader, I'm just like, okay, you know what, I'm done. Like, it's weirdly annoying. Yeah, so that's Civilization 6. Long story short, leaders talk to you and they won't shut up.
I have never really played, like, I've played them passively, so I mean, it sounds super annoying. I've never delved deep into them.
That was a personal. I know that was almost a borderline rant. As soon as I got talking about it, I'm like, God, this really does annoy me a lot. I wasn't sure if I had enough to say, but oh man, apparently I just like couldn't stop. Lord.
Well, you when you were defining what we're doing today, you forgot to kind of mention one thing. It's like these. You said we're talking about games that have a flaw. It's more like this game would be damn near a masterpiece if it didn't have that flaw.
True. True.
Yeah, so I think we got to kind of really point that out. Is like, yeah, like these games are. It's like even despite this flaw, they're really good. But it's like if they didn't have this flaw, they would be damn near masterpieces.
Absolutely. Sorry, I meant that, but I didn't say that. I figured my audience would get it.
I was gonna jump in there and throw it in there, but I didn't. There wasn't like a nice little niche opportunity. As far as my first game, it would be a game that came out a little while ago now. I'd say probably about 5 years ago, for the 3DS. A game called Bravely Default. Now, Bravely Default is a JRPG, turn-based, little bit different. It has this mechanic where you can kind of take, turn-based RPGs. It's like you go, then the enemy goes, then you go, then the enemy goes. Mm-hmm. But in this game, the mechanic is you can bank your turns essentially, and then take more turns at once, or you can take more turns right off the top, and then the other, like say you can go like, oh, I can do 3 turns, and then the enemy will do 3 turns. But then there's also like, oh, some moves also take more than 1 turn to like pull off. So it's like, okay, I can do 2 moves for this character, 1 move for this character, whatever. Anyway,
Interesting. I like that idea.
it's an absolutely stunning game. For the 3DS, is one of the best looking games on 3DS. It has this like really cool, like all the environments are like this beautiful watercolor. The characters are really well written. All the characters are very it has a lot of humor, a lot of heart. All the characters are very well defined, not only on your team, but also like the enemies and stuff like that. The music is unbelievable. The music is just so good. So having said all these things, as we talked about, there's a flaw to this game, of course, that prevents it from being a masterpiece. And this occurs probably about halfway through the game. Now, spoilers for Bravely Default, you've been warned. About halfway through the game, you essentially beat the last boss. And you're like, okay, that was cool. And then the boss does this thing where it like resets time. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm back at this point of the game. And you're like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. So you kind of like battle your way back to the end. And then you're like at that final encounter again. And then you beat it again. And you're reset again. And you're like, what the hell? So I remember my buddy at the time, he had played the game and he's like, oh, it's a great game, blah, blah, blah. You should play it. So I had beat this boss now. So I had reset the thing, I think about 3 or 4 times. And then finally I like asked my buddy, I'm like, hey man, like I've quote beat this game 4 times. Like how many times do I have to beat it? And he looks at me, he's like, do you want to know? I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, 6. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. So you essentially have to beat the game 6 times to get like the true ending. So pretty much like the first time you beat it is like the first time you're playing through it again. So like the second playthrough is almost as long as the first playthrough. But then after that, you can pretty much, I mean, if you're at a high enough level, you can pretty much just skip to the final, like the quote final boss every time. But then you don't fight all the other bosses, and you don't do all this other stuff, like all this like mini quests and stuff like that. So you don't get like the full storyline. So I mean, by the end, you are kind of just like, all right, just like going through and just like fighting the bosses. But yeah, and then finally the 6th time you beat the boss, that's when you like go into like the final like last leg of the game and then actually beat the game.
Wow, that sounds annoying. And I love how, as a sidebar, how hot you came in on your friend. Like, hey man, how many times do I have to beat this game? You said it was good. I
came in hot and heavy.
You're like, what the fuck? You had him up against the wall. Fuck, man.
I pulled out a switchblade, had it up to his fucking. I had like the point right up to his neck, and there's just like that one little bead of blood that came down. And I'm just like,
okay, hold on a second. You're starting to borderline into like full on felony assault charges. So let's pull back. It was fake blood, right? Right?
How many times?
How many times? 6, Andrew. 6. Oh, God.
But other than that,
I have a wife and kids.
And like I get it. Like we've talked about before, how like the Japanese market, when they love the grind, especially in RPGs, like they love the grind, and like that's what it was too. It was like every time the game reset, it was like all the enemies were now a higher difficulty, all the bosses were a higher difficulty, and you had to like grind out levels again. And it wasn't too bad. You didn't have to sit there in like a low area and just like grind out levels. But like you like to fight that final boss again, unless you're like we're already stacked and shit. You pretty much had to go around and like, and then you went to like each little dungeon kind of thing, and you like fought the boss again. And there was like a little bit more of like a backstory given to like each boss. So they did make it worth it as far as storyline beats go. But at the end of the day, yeah, it was still like 6 times.
It still sounds like a personal hell for me. Like when I finish a game, which I'll be honest, is not as often as most people. I definitely don't want to be like at the end and it's like, hey, you know what you just did? Go do it again.
5
You're
more
back.
times.
Go do it again. You're back. Go do it again. I would probably, like, if it wasn't for COVID, if this is a JRPG, I assume the company that made them is based in Japan.
Yeah, it's a Squeenix game.
Okay, then yeah, I would go firebomb Squeen. No, that's not true. No federal international crimes.
Wow,
I would write them a
this
strong
podcast
letter.
got violent.
Yeah, we're going to jail at the end of this podcast. That's all right. You know what? I've had a good run. Wow, that sounds incredibly annoying. It sounds like a great game that has this weird.
Yeah,
that's so strange. Like I could see doing it twice, maybe thrice, but like
it's just inflating the playtime. Like I get it, but like having said that, like I can't stress how good this game is. Otherwise, like every other piece of the puzzle, like the music, the art, the
Mm-hmm.
graphics, the storyline, the characters, like
The
everything is
gameplay
just
itself,
top notch.
hopefully.
Yeah, and the gameplay, as I said, the whole like turn based, but you're like kind of like banking.
I like
turns.
that idea, actually. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I know you have a 3DS. If you want to borrow it, let me know.
Maybe we'll borrow it. Okay, now we're talking about software piracy. Good God, what's going on?
What? You could lend games to your friends?
If you want to support Jeff Bezos, I guess you could.
What?
Evil. I don't know where I'm going with that. I got nothing. And speaking of nothing, we're gonna go to something which is a great game. My second game on the list. This recording has not been going great. Is almost at the time was actually for a long time my favorite game until its sequel came out. Is you've heard me mention it, Mass Effect, the original Mass Effect, which came out in 2008, I believe. Is first of all probably the game that's closest I've ever played to being in an actual movie. Like it's cinematic, it's got character development. The combat at the time was good, though I will say it ages a little bit, but it's a great game. I love playing it, but every time I start a Mass Effect run, I've done 4 to completion right now, but I'm sure it's like 6 or 7 in total when you don't go all the way through 3. Every time I fire up Mass Effect, I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. Oh, right. This. And if there are any Mass Effect fans out right now, they're going to say, oh, he's talking about the hacking minigames. No, those are okay. You know what? They're a little annoying, but you just quick save before you move on. They're fine. I'm talking about the Mako. You see, in Mass Effect, you go exploring the galaxy and you visit a lot of planets, which are just, you see, a lot of the time you're going to a place and there's a mission, like you land on a ship and you have to take out some terrorists on the ship, or you got to kill aliens in a base facility or stuff like that. But a lot of the planets are basically just a giant, roughly, I would say it's about a kilometer by a kilometer square section of the planet that you drive this 6-wheeled monstrosity through. When I say monstrosity, it's not big, it's actually low and sleek, and it looks good, but it handles so terribly. And the game, you're forced to do it. There's several, like, critical game mission points where you have to be in the Mako, and it handles poorly. It's got a weapon, it's got a cannon and a machine gun. The machine gun's okay, but, like, the spread is terrible on it, and you're never right up next to anything shooting with it. The cannon fires, but does that thing where it's like, fire, and it's not hit scan, it's, I guess it's projectile based, even though you don't actually see anything, it just kind of fire, and then a moment later something explodes, and okay, so let's say you take some damage in the Mako. The Mako, you can repair it, but that takes a while, or you're like, oh no, my shields are down, I'm just gonna reverse behind this rock so the Geth can't shoot at me, and then you have to sit there, and it takes, like, it feels like 6 hours for the shields to recharge. It's such a weird design choice. Now, I understand the broad reason for it, which is it's actually weirdly like Bravely Default was just mentioned. It's a way to stretch the game, because if you just went from story beat to story beat and like little mini mission, side mission to side mission, it would be a lot quicker. But this has you driving around on these planets, which are essentially just a flat surface that they've done. Oh god, I can't remember what the term is. I want to say it's like splining. It's where you kind of like imagine a flat surface that you pull up here and like, oh, this is a mountain. Now this is a mountain range. And oh, I'm gonna pull up over there, and that's a little cliff face. But it's very like angular, and it's easy to get stuck in, and the thing drives terribly. It's got these jump jets which you're supposed to use to get out of stuff, but it doesn't really help, and it's a terrible design flaw. It takes a game that is great, and whenever you get to these parts where you have to drive around the planet looking and searching for stuff, it just makes you go like, oh, okay, I'll do this. Oh, hey, I found something. I found some minerals. Oh, let's scan. Oh, I'm in a fight. Oh, back in the Mako. Oh, hey, let's get it. Let's do it. Oh, back in this damn thing. You know, and it's very, it's weirdly, like, I guess what I'm saying is there are design flaws which seem like they're trying to be woven into the entire story, like the Bravely Default repetition that you mentioned. But this is weirdly, like, they could have made the Mako handle better. I don't see how, like, there isn't a reason for it to handle so poorly. And they could have made the weapon on it, like, firing out better. It really strikes me as a part where they kind of got to a point in it and said, this works for now, but we have to focus on other things and let it go, but we're still going to let this go through and not try and polish this. That's the only reason I can see that they would have the Mako in it.
I know you've mentioned, like, I've never played Mass Effect before, but every time you've said I should play it, you're always like, oh, the Mass Effect's so good, but there's this whole like driving part that's just terrible. Like, just ignore it.
The one thing I will say in its favor is the first time you do it, it's not as bad as I make it sound. And I am definitely talking from the perspective of someone who's replayed the game several times, and it's the first game you play in the trilogy, so I've replayed that more than any other game. Like, I try to do a run probably every year or so. It's not so bad the first time you play it. Like, you'll be fine, but it definitely won't make you go like, "Ooh, this is fun." You'll be like, it's all right. Basically, long story short, Mass Effect is a great game, and I can't wait for you to play it. And I think you'll really like it. It's you like story, and you like cinematography, and you like gameplay. And it's pretty good. The gameplay's a little rough, but it's still highly worth playing. But these Mako sections, I recommend you have your laptop open to the side and just like have the map so you can go as fast as possible through each planet. That's what I do whenever I'm doing it now. It's just like, oh, I know exactly where the minerals are or whatever I'm looking for. I just go to the points and then move on. But yeah, and speaking of moving on, game number 2 from Andrew.
I like that you've used my last name every single time you've said my name today. Just to differentiate.
Hey man,
from
I'm
the
just
other
branding.
Andrews.
I'm just branding for you.
Yeah, so this one's a bit of a dig, actually. I was like trying to think of this one. There's a few that I kind of had on my list. Hopefully there might be a little kind of honorable mention section, but if not,
absolutely.
that's fine.
I got a few that I'm like, these still aren't. I have a list of 3, but there's a few others we can slam on. Absolutely.
Okay, that's good. I got them in my back pocket anyway. But anyway, my second choice is for the original PlayStation, a game called Legacy of Kane: Soul Reaver.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great game. I remember I played the demo on like a PlayStation demo disc, and I'm like, holy shit, this game's badass. You have to stay alive. You have to like murder dudes and then like eat their souls. Otherwise, you're gonna die. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was a really great game. I think it's a sequel to a PC game, I believe. There was like Legacy of Kane 1 and 2 or something like that.
I think there was a Legacy Kane series on the PC. It's kind of ringing a bell, but like I definitely never played them. It's sort of like the murky memory kind of business.
Yeah, there was like, I believe it's called Legacy of Kane. There was 1 and 2, and then this is essentially takes place afterwards, and you're like Kane's kind of like right hand man who has fallen from grace, and you're essentially kind of like going on this story to fight Kane. And people of the series probably think I'm going to say that the ending is the one problem of the series, of the game, but I mean, that is terrible. There's this huge game. It's like, I don't know, 40 hours long, whatever. You get to the end. There's this huge, like, you're going down this like spiral staircase, or going up. I can't remember, maybe down. Anyway, you're going along the spiral staircase, and there's like all these like kind of like flashbacks to other missions and other bosses of the game. And you get to the last fight. You get to Kane. You get to the final boss, and he's like, "Peace out, bitches. See you in number 2." And you're just like, what the fuck?
Oh, you don't even fight him?
No, you literally, it's not even like a boss fight and then he's like, "Peace out, bitches." He's literally like, you get to him and he's like, "Peace out, bitches." So that is obviously super annoying, but that is not I'm going to go a different way with this. That's a story beat. That's super annoying. I actually never played Legacy of Kane 2 because of it, because it pissed me off so goddamn much, which I hear is also a very good game. But my biggest gripe with the game, aside from that, is so you have this beautiful game. It's absolutely like on the PS1, like the graphics obviously are a bit rough, but it's like you have these beautiful environments, these massive, huge environments, these beautiful puzzles that happen all the way through. So you have all these puzzles, and essentially what these puzzles are is like there's these kind of designs on walls, and then there's these cubes, and you have to like flip the cubes around, and they have different like parts of the design on them, and then you have to like slot them into the wall in the correct 3D cube space so that they all fit, and then you can, you complete the picture, and then you can move along with the storyline. You can move along with the level, whatever. Now, there's different things. You got to use different abilities. Like the more abilities you unlock, the more complex these kind of cube puzzles happen. Fine, whatever. My gripe with the game is during these cube puzzles, there is an unending stream of enemies. So as you're trying to do these cube puzzles, there's just an unending stream of these like low level enemies that like you can't fully focus on the enemies, because then you're not doing the block puzzle, but then you can't fully focus on the block puzzle because these enemies are just constantly spawning at you. So you have this problem where you have to like like half fight these enemies and then like half do this fucking tedious block puzzle, and there's a lot of them in this game. That's also probably a little bit of an issue too, is there's a bit too much of these damn block puzzles. But the whole, like, they wouldn't be as painful if the whole time you weren't just constantly getting assaulted by these fucking low level enemies. And then there's times too where like you would die. You would just be like kind of focused on the block puzzle a little too much, then you would just kind of die and get swarmed. Then you're like, fuck, and you gotta like go back to the checkpoint or whatever. And it was just annoying as hell. As I said, so aside from the obviously the ending beat, aside from that and like the block puzzles, this game was like, it's a bit of a, I wouldn't say it's a sleeper hit. Like, it's definitely known, but I wouldn't say it's like the most popular game for PlayStation. But I feel like if they toned that down a little bit, I feel like it might have been a little bit more accessible to people.
Yeah, it's crazy. It sounds like somebody was like, well, the puzzles are too easy, or let's throw some combat in there to make it sounds like a weird way, almost like Bravely Default's like, we have this element, let's just make it a little tougher and repetitive to just like, yeah, that sounds like hell is what I'm trying to say. That just sounds so annoying.
It was annoying. It's just one of those things too where it's like, it prolongs the playtime of the game for sure, but like, it inflates it, but like not even in a good way, like, you know what I mean? It's like if you're gonna do that, at least do it in a more creative way than just like more bad guys.
Yeah, make it like you do a block puzzle, and then those enemies that were bothering you show up in a massive wave, and you got to fight them quick. I don't know Legacy of Kane. I don't know what the combat's like, whether that'd be viable. But yeah,
it was pretty good. It was like decent combat. It was like kind of like hack and slash-ish with like there's like abilities and shit. But yeah, it was essentially hack and slash. But you had these like cool, like you had really cool things in that game. This is just an aside, but you had cool things with that game where you always had to it was like vampires essentially, like you were fighting, so you always had to impale them. But you could use things like you could find stuff like around the environment and like throw stuff and like use stuff as like kind of like what do you call a stake, or like to impale them or whatever.
I'm picturing like one of the things being, ooh, thank God I'm fighting these vampires in this wooden sharpened bat factory. Like,
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Imagine this happening in like a ball playpen, I'd be fucked.
Yeah, this like wrought iron gate factory. This is super handy. But anyway, yeah, so throwing it back to you, what is your what is your next choice?
My third game is one you've played, finally. Red Dead Redemption 2.
That was gonna be on my list, but I knew we talked about this.
Yeah, I think we had. I remember when I texted you about the list, I was like, gosh, did he choose this? I do have one that I would have replaced it with, but this needs to be mentioned. Since you were mentioning it, this needed to be mentioned. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great game, whether you like the single player or the online. I personally actually prefer the online. I know it gets shat on a lot, and honest truth is Rockstar's not supporting it because you're like, we make so much money from GTA 5. Why would we spend time on this? GTA 5 is like making us millions. It's great. But I like the online part because it's very quieting. It's like a contemplative online. It's like you deal with people occasionally, but you're free to do your own thing, whether it's just hunting or just, relaxing, fishing. Yeah, I like the thing. But the thing about Red Dead Redemption 2, and this is from the very start, whether you're single player or online, which just got released, actually. That's an interesting bit of news. They just released the online only of the game for like $5 or something on Steam, I believe. It's the interface. Red Dead Redemption 2's controls are laughably bad. And it's so weird. It's like, there have been bad controls in the past where you have a controller in your hand or a keyboard and mouse, and you're like, oh, yeah, I get why they have to be like this. There's a complexity to the controls, so you need to have Red Dead doesn't need that. Like, it's basically Grand Theft Auto on a horse, and, like, it's so strange. It's like, you use the R1 to aim, but, you do this and that. Like, the controls in Red Dead Redemption 2 were so terrible that, like, I find when I'm jumping from one game to another, you have that moment. I'm sure listeners who play video games know this, when you're switching between two games, where you're like, oh wait, no, this isn't the button to open the map, or oh no, this isn't the how you interact with stuff. It's triangle, not square or what have you. But with Red Dead Redemption 2, usually that kind of time. Sorry, not with Red Dead Redemption 2 exactly, but with most games, usually the adaptation time I'd say is like a half hour, an hour. Maybe a day or two of light playing, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm back in the saddle, and that's if it's an exceptionally different control. Red Dead Redemption 2, you can play for like days and weeks, and you're still like, oh shit, I meant to feed my horse, but I just punched my horse and now it's run away. Like, this game's interface is terrible. And I'm also, as a sidebar to that, the fact that you don't really do much with the interface makes it even weirder that it's so terrible. Like, it's not like you have a very complicated series of things you're doing. You get on a horse, you get off a horse, you talk to somebody, you draw your gun, you shoot your gun. You can pet a horse, but that could just be like an interaction menu. And how you access your inventory, where you have to hold down like the R1 or is it the R1, Andrew? Do you remember offhand? You played way more than
I mean, that I don't know. It's been a long time.
Yeah, you hold down a button and then it's radial, but you got to like go over two to get to your brush, but the guns are back on the one, and the second one's got your hat or something. Like, it's an interface that goes from this isn't great to this is bad to almost, is Rockstar fucking with us? I'd love to sit down with the person who designed the interface for Red Dead Redemption 2 and say, what was your reason behind this? I wouldn't do it combatively. I'd make them a nice tea beforehand or something. But like, I would love to sit down and say, why did you make this so complicated? What were the design reasons? And I'm sure he had his reasons. This is the kind of thing that I feel like wouldn't get to this point and be released like this, especially for Rockstar, that has the ability to sit on a game for a while and say, okay, you know what, we're going to take another year because we want to get this perfect. Yeah, Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great game, whether you play online or single player, but man, the controls are almost struggling to work against you, I find, in that game. You played Red Dead, did you find the controls were fun and smooth?
Well, I mean, it's Rockstar controls. Like, the controls just aren't good. Also, Rockstar needs to abandon this whole like lock-on mechanic of like the auto targeting. I know you can turn that off, and like I did for like the main campaign, but I mean, then you have like Deadeye anyway. Deadeye trivializes any encounter, really. Mm-hmm. And if you want to play, online, you kind of have to play with auto aim on. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you're just handicapping yourself. So
because everyone else uses it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with Grand Theft Auto, I think there was auto aim lobbies and non-auto aim lobbies, but with Red Dead Online, there isn't.
Actually, the last time I played, there was.
Oh,
it was interesting. I got online on the PC at least. There were lobbies that were auto aim and others that were free aim. Yeah, they did. Actually.
Okay, well, yeah, I apologize. It's been a while since I played the online. Mm-hmm. There is a random long lost episode of Buffs and Nerfs where we do a deep dive on Red Dead. I don't know if that'll ever come out. Having said that, I think my biggest problem, I agree with you 100% with the controls. They're clunky as fuck. Like, mm-hmm. moving Arthur is just, or I mean your character, or spoilers. Are we okay with spoilers?
Okay, if you're listening to this and haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2, jump ahead 1 minute. I'm giving you 1 minute of spoilers starting now.
No, it's definitely not 1 minute. I was just going to say, whether you're playing as
58
Arthur,
seconds.
Whether you're playing with Arthur, your online character, or with John, it's just clunky as hell. That's it. That was the only spoiler. You play as John. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, the fucking movement controls, you'll be in town, like, running, and you'll be in Saint Denis just running around, and then you'll all of a sudden randomly just spear some lady by a complete accident, mm-hmm. and then you'll be in this middle of a firefight and just get destroyed because, the Saint Denis police force don't fuck around. But yeah, so it's just like, yeah, the controls are bad. But my biggest problem with Red Dead, and there are a few, like, now Red Dead 2 is one of my favorite games. I'd say it's one of my favorite games of all time. It has one of the best narratives I've ever played, I've ever experienced, whether that be a book, movie, TV show, video game, it doesn't matter. Like, one of the best narratives, one of the best protagonists in Arthur Morgan. There's so many good things I can say about the game, but that's not this podcast.
Welcome back, people who were waiting a minute for the spoilers. Go on.
So I said right away there was
I actually timed that perfectly.
It was like, give me 1 second of spoilers. Anyway, now you got me all off topic. So my one biggest gripe with the game is their kind of almost duality with their creative decision making, where we have this beautiful open world game, yet we don't let you do things in it. Like, as far, like, you can kind of, like, you can role play as Arthur, you can go around, you can hunt, there's there's things where you have to, like, every time you skin an animal, you have to watch the entire, like, scene of him, like, skinning the animal. If he's carrying grain and, like, if he's carrying water in camp, you have to, like, fill up the bucket slowly and walk slowly over to camp. So it's, like, very realistic in these ways. But then also it's like you have things where it's like there's like a camp happiness mechanic that means absolutely nothing. You have mission structures where if you deviate from the mission structure in any way, you're instantly failing. Like, you'll do a mission, you'll be like, oh, there's some guys over there. Instead of facing them head on, I'm going to go flank them. You'll, like, go, like, 8 feet outside of, like, the mission parameters, and it's just, like, instantly mission failed.
Yeah, I remember
so it's
that.
like,
It's so annoying.
So you have these, like, two kind of differing almost like ethos almost of video game making, where we're gonna let this player have, like, you know, this almost like infinite freedom, and we're gonna, like, really dive deep into the role play aspects, but then also we're gonna have these, like, super curated moments where you need to do exactly what we want you to do, or you fail. So I don't know, I felt like there was these kind of, like, two different mantras almost of, like, video game making, where I feel like they should have just kind of went, maybe not full in one way, but maybe tip the scales a little bit more in one way or another, and I think it would have served the game as a whole. Again, one of the best experiences of my life. I'm nitpicking.
Wow.
I could say some other things about the game that are, you know, not as good, but overall, like, as I said, like, one of the best experiences, like, gaming experiences of my life. That's why we're talking about, like, things that would, I'd say those are the two, like the mechanics, like the actual gameplay mechanics, and that kind of, like, the dual decision making. I'd probably say really hamper Red Dead 2 from being, like, a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny, actually. We talked about this in the podcast that I guess never got released. To illustrate your point, like, the game is very much just like, here's an open world, but at these moments you're gonna do this one fucking thing and nothing else. Is minor spoiler, a character gets put in jail really early on, and personally, I didn't like this character from day one, and you're not supposed to like him, and I was all for just, like, let him fucking rot in jail and get hung. I'm cool with that. But nope, you go visit him, and then you have to walk over, press triangle to the steam engine thing, and attach a chain to the gates, to the barred windows, and you pull off the wall, and then you escape, and he shoots up the town. It's the Rockstar really does seem to be like, we're gonna give you this huge open world, but at the, like you said it right, but when we're at the story beats or these moments, they're super curated, and they're almost on rails. So
exactly, there are levels of Red Dead that you're literally on rails. Also, I mean, like, Red Dead 2 also suffered from things like the last third of the game really dragged. The mission the mission structure was very repetitive. It was all like, go into this place, oh no, things went bad, shoot your way out, and, like, that was pretty much every mission. There were some really big set piece missions, you know, like there's like that on rail level where you're, like, kind of going through Saint Denis on the streetcar. There's, like, the hot air balloon level. There's, like, some really good, like, set piece levels where, like, some big things happen. Like, I remember another one later in the game, you're, like, on a canoe and you're like storming, like, a river boat. Like, that one's pretty sick. So there are some, like, really big missions, but the game really does drag. It kind of, when you get back from Guarna, which is, like, this, like, little side area you go to for, like, a couple hours. You go to, like, the quote Cuba area. And the game never kind of really regains the steam it had in the first half of the I'd probably say 2/3 of the game. Once you kind of go to Guarna, it never, like, regains that kind of fuel until, like, the very last act of the game. And then the last act of the game is probably, you know, that's one of the strongest acts of the game. If you can kind of push through that slog of that, like, later, you know, last kind of, like, the middle, not the middle, like, the last portion of the game, if you can push through that, you'll be rewarded for sure.
Yep. Red Dead is, we'll move on from that, but it is definitely a game that is, like, it's a really, really great game that has some glaring flaws.
I could do a whole episode on it.
Yeah, I think we should at some point. Maybe we'll.
It'll get released one day. Well, it's. I feel like it's a solid episode. It's before we got the technical aspects not down. I mean, we're not perfect in any way, but it's before. It's in the before times when our quality was not as crisp.
Speak for yourself. I was perfect technically from day one, if I remember correctly. Anyways, so moving on from Red Dead, we could almost, like you said, do a whole episode about it. Andrew, what is your third choice for a game with a big flaw?
Before I do my third choice, do you want to maybe just do a quick couple? You want to do an honorable mention?
Sure. I was gonna say that for last, but I can do it now. Do you want me to do
Yeah,
mine first, or?
well, you just did Red Dead. I'll do an honorable mention. Equal is as equal does. I don't know if that's actually
Why are
a
we
saying.
doing the honorable mentions before the? All right, go on.
Well, you should have done the honorable mentions before your third one. I feel like, but
What?
whatever. The honorable mentions. You do the honorable mentions before the final reveal.
You do the honorable mentions afterwards. You get the list, and then afterwards it's the honorable mentions.
No.
Yeah, that's how it's done, son. That's how it's
you do
done
the
since
honorable
the
mentions
first time.
The
No,
honorable mentions
you're
are done
insane.
before the
This
final.
is nonsense. All right, readers.
What?
Because people
No,
are reading
honorable
this
mentions
podcast.
because
Listeners,
you get the final out, and then nobody's sticking around for the honorable mentions. You want people in their seats for the honorable mentions.
no, you don't.
Keep 'em
Honorable
in-
mentions
keep 'em
are you
in
just going like,
suspense.
oh, these are some other things. Anyways, sure, honorable mentions time. That's it. This is our last podcast. Honorable mentions time. Andrew, honorable mention.
For my honorable mention, it would be something introduced into the Pokemon franchise, relatively recent. I believe it was introduced in XY. Now, this thing is completely optional, but in my opinion, completely breaks the game. So originally in Pokemon, the way it works is if you battle with a Pokemon in a battle, so you have 6 in your party. If you use any one of them in a battle, they will gain XP. Now, what you originally would always do is if you had a low level Pokemon, you would put him out first, and then you would start the battle, instantly switch out your regular Pokemon, your battler, and then those two Pokemon would split the XP. That's kind of
Okay.
just the classic way you do it. That's the way it's always been done. You put your weak Pokemon out first, switch them out right away, put in your battler, and then they split the XP. So now what they introduced in, I believe, XY, I apologize if I got that wrong, but I believe this is XY, which came out, I think 5 or 6 years ago. They introduced something called an Exp Share, which is an experience points share. So if you toggle this on, which now in the newer games, it's automatically toggled on and you have to toggle it off. If you toggle this on, when you do a battle, the XP awarded from the battle is automatically distributed 6 ways between all the Pokemon. So what happens is, so before, what you had to do is you kind of had to like spread out your battles between the Pokemon. Be like, all right, this guy's going to battle a little bit. All right, now this guy's going to battle a little bit. Now this weaker guy, I'm going to put him out first, switch him out. And you kind of had to like manually distribute XP and level up your Pokemon individually. But now what XP Share does is just easy mode. It's just every battle, you just put out your strongest Pokemon. It doesn't matter. Just put them out, demolish the other team. Instantly XP gets shared between your whole crew. So what? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say like this. 2 points about that. It's interesting bringing that up. One, I played Pokemon Sun and Moon, and I'm pretty sure that was there. I seem to remember that being
Sun Moon, I believe was was when they turned it on. Like, sorry, the toggle was automatically on.
Yeah,
and you have to turn it
100%.
off.
Like I was like, because as you were discussing, I was thinking back to playing them. Like, yeah, that was on. Yeah, and I guess the second thing that's interesting about that is going back between like Pokemon's Japanese developed game, comparing it to Western role playing games, which I know don't seem like you would compare, but there is XP. In Western role playing games, initially when like in the 90s when they started, or even earlier, it used to be whoever you had in the party gained XP. If somebody died during a fight, you could revive them, but they didn't gain any XP, that kind of thing. I remember noticing at one point, I would have said, like, I'm gonna feel it's around 2000, games suddenly adopted a whole, whether they're in the party or not, they gain XP. And one of the people I'm gonna blame for that actually is one of my favorite production companies, BioWare, because they were making these role-playing games that had EXP as obviously you level up and you get better abilities and stuff like that, but they also wanted you to spend time with all the characters, so they didn't want you to focus on, oh, it's me, this character and this character have the most XP, everyone else just, they're too weak to make it to the end game, so we just won't use them. So I get why it's on for something like that with story, but with Pokemon, I actually feel that it would have been better if it had been the way you described it, where you choose who gets the XP in a fight, sort of thing. So you can
and again, I get that it is 100% optional. You can turn that off, but I mean, it's like I turned it off once in a while. I would turn it on just because I was like, like I just want to level this guy. But like, it's just such easy mode. Like those games are easy enough already. Like they are kids games. There are some fights kind of like near the end of the game, in the end game, whatever, that are a bit tougher. But like those are relatively easy games. But you can just fucking just beat that game into the ground if you turn XP Share on. I mean, essentially, you can just use one Pokemon all the way through and just like whatever, just level up everybody at the same time. So anyway, it's optional. That's why it's only an honorable mention. Yeah. How about you? Do you have an honorable mention?
I do. Two? I have just one that when I was going through my list of what were games. So in this case, instead of it a great game that had a flaw, this would be like an okay game that could have possibly been good except for this flaw. This is 2015's Thief, which is actually the fourth in a series of the Thief games. There was Thief 1, Thief 2, The Metal Age, I believe, and then Thief 3, Darkness or something. I can't remember what they were called, but they were great games. And for those who don't know, Thief is basically, you play as this character named Garrett in this sort of Victorian era, slightly medieval leaning city, and you go around steal things, as you might have guessed from the thing, by sneaking in shadows. But it's one of these classic stealth games. It's actually one of the best stealth games ever made, where you just are basically, you're watching patterns. Okay, I know the guard's going to pass here at this point. I'm going to sneak through the shadows. I can either knock him out or just avoid him. And like oftentimes you can go through an entire level without anyone noticing it. You don't even have to knock anyone out. That's the challenge of the games. So in Thief 4, which I think they replaced like the H with a 4 or something like that, so it'd be like T4E or something, or the IE, maybe the F was a 4 at the end. I don't know. They did that stupid thing that was, I hate elite speak titles.
Fant 4 stick.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, don't do that. Don't do that, guys. Just stop. But that surprisingly is not the flaw. It wasn't in the title because that doesn't affect gameplay. So the way this game is based is it's a hub-based game. You start in the city is your hub, and you go on these missions, which is like, a loading screen to another area, which is fine, totally fine. But the city itself is laid out in such a complicated, poor manner that like, and there's a map, but the map doesn't tell you shit. It just says you're in this area kind of thing. And this flaw made you're like, I've got to go over and visit this guy on the docks, or I've got to go back to my hideout. And it's not just, you're a thief. You're supposed to stick to the shadows, break through windows. I get that kind of element of wanting it to not be a straight line simply walking down the street, which are patrolled by guards all the time, so you can't just walk down the streets. But the way they laid out the sections of the hub, it's just so like, okay, if I want to get over there, I have to go over into this alley, then climb up, go back across some like catwalks. The city loves having wooden catwalks on the second floor for some reason. And then we walk over. I gotta jump across a beam. Now the beam takes me to this house. I've got to break in, go in through the door of the window of the house. Now go down to the first floor, walk out, sneak across the alley, go back up to it doesn't. When you're trying to get around from one place to another in the hub,
there's no flow.
There's no flow. The flow is so broken up, and I suspect part of it is minor loading screens. There are definite loading screens when you go between large districts, but even still, it feels like they should have either simplified to get rid of them, and it's so like it becomes annoying because the other thing is like, and this is I guess an aesthetic choice to compound it, is the city's an interesting sort of dark, gloomy, Victorian, constantly night kind of business. It's not Dark City. It's just you're a thief, you work at night. But it's very like samey. Like there isn't like a lot of like, there's a landmark over there. That's the bell tower. There's a bell tower. But like, like it's clock tower. But it's very, you never get a feeling of like, I know exactly where I am in relation to where I've been. Once you go into a new section, you're always like, this alley kind of looks like that alley in the street. So Thief 4 wasn't a great game, but it would have been a good game. The missions are kind of fun, sneaking around. If you like that sort of sneak around, watch patterns, avoid or knock out guards. Ooh, there's a little crawl space up there. Ooh, there's some stuff to steal here. If you like that kind of thing, it's actually a good game for that. But just, you spend so much time in the central hub doing minor side quests and such that it just becomes annoying, like the layout of it. So, well, I think that takes care of our honorable mentions. I really just had Thief. I could go on for, I'm sure, for hours about other games, but seeing as we've already gone an hour, maybe we should move on to your last choice for games that are great with one big ass flaw.
with a caveat.
Ooh.
So my choice for number one would be Spider-Man for PS4. Not the new one. Excuse me. Not the new Miles Morales game, the spin-off, whatever you want to call it. I haven't played that yet. I don't own PS5.
Freudian slip. You don't own a PS5.
I don't own a
Okay. All right. I'm taking off my video game hat and putting on my psychotherapy hat. So, Andrew, when you say you don't own a penis.
Oh, okay. Moving right along. Oh, that's funny. I don't own a PS5. So I haven't played the new game, but my final game is Spider-Man for PS4. I absolutely loved the game. There was, a lot of stuff to love. A few problems here and there, but the biggest, most glaring problem for me in that game were the stealth missions. Now, be that the Miles Morales or the Mary Jane missions, they were stinkers. Now you have this fast-paced, kinetic, this fast action. You're flying off walls. You're traversing the city as Spider-Man. Like, that's one game where I almost never use the fast travel because it's like, how far do I have to go? Oh, I have to go all the way across the map. Fuck it, like, let's do it. And like, they had this cool skill gap on web slinging where it's like I could hold a button and web sling, or as you're web slinging, you can do tricks, gain speed, really make it fun. It's almost kind of like this almost like a mini game, if you will, traversing the city. So anyway, so you have this, like, the action is frenetic, like everything is just so fun and just fast paced, and then you have these fucking moments of the game that just everything grinds to a halt, where you're either Miles Morales or as I said a few times, you're Mary Jane. The Mary Jane parts, there are a few missions where you're Mary Jane and you have to kind of target a thing and then tell Spider-Man to like drop out of the ceiling and take a picture of it. Those aren't as bad, but they're still they still just, and like also like there's a mission where you're in Grand Central Station, and I don't know, just kind of like the environment and telling Spider-Man, it's not as bad. But there's just these moments where, I mean, I remember like sneaking around a base as Mary Jane, and you just fucking, it's one of those things too where it's like if you get spotted, like it's insta death. Like there's no like, oh, like you got spotted and you can like run away and hide or whatever. Like you're Mary Jane, you're not doing shit against like a whole platoon of these like fucking teched out cyber squad looking dudes. Yeah, so it's just also like Miles Morales, like again, like going into the game, Miles Morales, like such a great character. He brings so much to the franchise, and then you're like, when I started playing the game, I was like, oh sweet, I get to play as Miles Morales, and like in the new game, looks like Miles Morales, you get to be you get to play as Spider-Man as Miles Morales, but in this game, you're just like a kid. And you're just like kind of like traveling through the city, and like you're like ducking behind cover. They're like the classic, like they're searching with spotlights and you have to like wait for the spotlight to go by. And it's just like, man, that's not why I'm playing this game. I'm playing this game called Spider-Man. I'm not playing this game called I'm a young boy sneaking through the city. And it's just like what we talked about, where you're just inflating playtime. It's like for every like, area that you're as your Spider-Man, you can just like traverse through so quickly. All they need to do is just make this one environment. So it's like they make an environment and that you play through as Spider-Man, that you're in there for, I don't know, maybe 3-4 minutes as you fight a bunch of bad dudes and you go to the next environment, whatever. In this case, it's like you're in this one environment. They only need to create one environment, and then you're in that one environment for, you're getting found a bunch. You're in that environment for like, I don't know, 20 minutes, something like that.
Yeah. Unless
you can like one bang it, whatever. But like, it's a pretty good chance you're going to get spotted a few times. And it's just frustrating. And it's just like, man, this isn't why I'm playing the game. Like, it's just so annoying when you just have these games. Like, if you play a stealth game and, like, the stealth mechanics are great, like a Metal Gear or, like you were saying, Thief or whatever, where, like, the stealth mechanics are good. They have good, in Hitman, throwing it back to a game called Beyond Good and Evil. These games had good stealth mechanics. The Spider-Man games, they're not built on stealth mechanics. That's just like 4 or 5 times throughout the game, they're just kind of like slapping these stealth mechanics into like this action game. And it's like, they're not very well done. So you're playing this action game that now you have to stop. You're stopping the forward momentum. and now you're playing a stealth game with poor stealth mechanics. It's just it really hindered the game from. It took it from like a 9 to like I'd say like an 8 for sure.
Yeah, I think the lesson from my previous honorable mention, your last thing, is that stealth games, if you're going to have stealth, make a stealth game. If you're doing something else, don't try and cram stealth in. Like, you have to focus on how stealth works. And also, the thing I hate about stealth games, and it sounds like Spider-Man did this, so I haven't played it, is when a guard sees you, it shouldn't be the end. It should be like, oh shit, this guard seen me. Can I take him out? No, okay, I'm gonna run away, hide in the shadows. Let's and you gotta
but the thing is, but the thing with Spider-Man though, it's like the stealth parts happened as Mary Jane or as Miles Morales.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like. That should be something in a stealth game, and it sounds like these games weren't designed for that. And it's basically what I'm saying is like, if you have a stealth game, you got to focus on stealth, and being caught shouldn't be the end. And don't try to wedge it into something else. I'm trying to think. There was one. I remember playing this first-person shooter that had a stealth mode. I don't think it was like the Syndicate game from like 10 years ago, but where it was like action, bang, 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 get a bang, 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 and then suddenly you were like, oh shit, I gotta sneak now. And it was just like, this feels weird, this is annoying, and as soon as you got caught. Like, or seen, you got caught. It was, 100% agree. I feel your pain on that, even though I haven't played that game.
Yeah, the Metal Gear games, they had a cool mechanic where you could choose at the beginning of the game whether or not getting found instantly ends you, like instantly ends your round or whatever, or like instantly wipes you. So that was definitely handy, where it's like, okay, you can play the game where if you want to play, like where it's like, oh, I got found, I want to, deal with that and either die or like fight everybody or get away and hide, whatever. You had that choice. Or if you wanted to just be like, oh, I got found, my game is like the sneaking game. To me, that is the end of my turn. I lost, I wiped, whatever.
Yeah,
like it's your own prerogative. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like that I totally respect. Like, maybe there are people who like, just like, oh, I want to start again as soon as I've found, because I'm going for like a pure stealth move through. I want to master it. Sure. Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, when I play stealth games, like Thief, for example, I'm not going like, I don't care if I get caught. I do try to like go through, and I have gone through entire levels without getting caught, but it feels, basically, I feel your pain from that, and I feel like developers, designers, if you're making a stealth game, put stealth in it. If you're not making a stealth game, don't put it in it. It's just not.
It's just an artificial inflation.
Works.
Yeah,
it never works.
I literally can't think of a single game where they had like a stealth section and people like and people thought it was good.
Yeah.
Again, this isn't a stealth game. Like, stealth games are good because if you have a game that's a stealth game, you probably have a pretty damn good stealth mechanic, and like you have good AI that lends to it, whatever. Like, even like the Batman, the Arkham series, they had a great stealth mechanic with like the stealth takedowns, whatever. Like that, those games have good AI, they have good stealth mechanics. This game, not so much.
Yeah. Well, it's just like the best Metal Gear game, Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. That one, pretty much the crowning achievement of the Metal Gear series, had good stealth because it was, at its heart, a stealth game, not a combat game.
You're out to lunch.
Best Metal Gear game of all time, at least from my experience. Editor's note, I've only played the one, so I'm sure I hear it's actually probably the worst of the group. But yeah, so I guess that about sums it up. Long story short, designers, quality assurance, playtesting. If one of your playtesters says, hey, I don't think this is working, listen to them. That's what I would say. But I mean, the thing is, though, I will say about all of these flaws we've discussed, the problem is they probably made sense to someone on the design team. Someone was like, oh yeah, the Mako handles just fine. This makes sense. This is how it would handle. Or, oh yeah, no, I know the redemption controls. This makes sense. Or, oh, players will like repeating this end boss battle because it's fun. 7 times? What was it for Bravely Default? 6?
6 times.
6 times, yeah. So, long story short.
I just wanted to add one thing. Honestly, I think there's one thing that kind of unites all the gripes we had across the board with all the games. Maybe not so much the Civ one, But I think a lot of them have to do with artificially inflating game time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it seems like the Civ one wasn't. That was just kind of more of an annoyance.
That's an annoyance. I don't think it's an inflation thing, no.
But like the Mako, and again, okay, you know what? Not so much with Red Dead as well. The clunky mechanics, but at least the My 3, I think. were,
I don't know. The clunky mechanics, it's like, oh no, now I'm being chased by the sheriff and I'm wanted. I gotta spend some time doing that. That's kind of inflates time.
Yeah, yeah. So sure, I think a lot of it has to do with at least with My 3, we're artificially inflating game time when. I mean, all they're trying to do is just say, like, you know, stretch their dollar. It's like, we've made this much, we've made this much game. People are playing through it too fast, or like they're getting through this. How do we lengthen people's gameplay? And like in Legacy of Kane, instead of just leaving you alone while you're doing your block puzzles, they're just throwing enemies at you. While, you know, in Spider-Man, they're throwing these arduous, kind of clunky stealth missions at you. Bravely Default, obviously, they're making you play, literally making you play through the game 6 times. Again, it's not a full playthrough. It's, you know, segmented.
Once is too much.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think there's a theme with my choices. At least it's like the artificially inflating a game, the playtime of a game is gonna bug me, and that comes from somebody who plays Destiny, who does the exact same thing pretty much daily.
Well, yeah, but it's like it's Destiny is repetitive, but you're still like moving forward. Like you're always like,
and at least they own it. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not like trying to be like, look at this thing that's different. It's like, no, we're gonna get you to shoot 30 Vex in this one specific area again. Like, you don't have to, but like, please do.
Yeah. And on that note, I'm gonna go grind strikes because I have to.
Are you actually? Because I actually need to grind strikes.
I do need to do strikes. I need to do a few things first, but maybe a half hour after recording. Isn't this great? Isn't this what you listen to a podcast for? 2 people scheduling, playing games together. Excitement, she wrote. I stole that from The Simpsons. Yeah, okay, so we might as well sign off with our typical, like a Canadian signing off on a phone. I guess this was a good podcast, and I'll talk to you later. I'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Yeah, no, I'll see you later. Later. Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Buffs and Nerfs podcast. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the Mind Refinery channel and follow us across all social media platforms.